Hey guys, welcome to Bookish Islander. My name is Juan. I hope you're all doing very well. I'm here today to do a review of The Testaments by Margaret Atwood, which is the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale. And the first thing that I must say about The Testaments is that when I heard that Margaret Atwood was working on a sequel for The Handmaid's Tale, I was very skeptical about it. I almost swore there. I was incredibly skeptical about it. I just thought this was a cynical move following the success of the streaming adaptation of The Handmaid's Tale by Hulu. I don't know how big a part the success of the series had on Margaret Atwood's decision to write a sequel. All I can say, and I will come right out and say it, is that boy, am I happy that she decided to write a sequel to The Handmaid's Tale. And the other thing that I want to say is that I was reluctant to pick up this book so soon. It's only been a week since its global release in English. And my initial plan wasn't to read it right now. My initial plan was to wait until the Booker Prize was announced in October, and then if The Testaments won, I would read it right away, and if it didn't win, I would read it at some later point. That was my initial plan. But reader, once again, I yielded to marketing, I succumbed to hype, and I picked it up and read it. So in The Testaments we deal with the downfall of Gilead. And this is no spoiler, it shouldn't come as a spoiler to you, because everyone who's read The Handmaid's Tale, and it is a book, let me say this, that was published in 1985, so you've had plenty of times to read The Handmaid's Tale. Everyone who's read The Handmaid's Tale knows that Gilead didn't last long in history and that at some point it fell. What we did not know from The Handmaid's Tale is how Gilead had succumbed finally. The Testaments gives us answers to that effect, so we know why, or at least we get enough evidence as to how and why Gilead fell, but also we get more information about how it came to be in the first place. But the best thing about Atwood's novel is not the light it sheds on the downfall or the creation of Gilead. In fact, I think that could be one of the weakest points of the novel. To me, knowing so much about the inner workings of Gilead was a bit of a disappointment, and I'll try to explain that. It is as if Margaret Atwood had a dark room which she presented to us in the first novel, in The Handmaid's Tale, and now here in The Testaments, for some reason she decided to open up all the windows, letting all the light flood in to reveal a very simple room. So a room that was dark and we were scared of before, now in the harsh light of day, doesn't look quite as scary as it once did. And of course, that's a relief, but it makes the story a lot less interesting. And I would say that as a result of that, The Testaments is a less complex novel if we compare it to The Handmaid's Tale. The Testaments is structured around 3 female voices rather than just one, as The Handmaid's Tale was. In The Handmaid's Tale we have Offred, and we have the tapes that are found in the future in which she recounts everything that happened to her. But here we have 3 voices instead of just one. And I think this is one of the things that makes The Testaments so good. So the 3 voices are the voice of a second-generation citizen of Gilead, and I say citizen, but I'm not sure if girls and women would be considered citizens in Gilead. Not fully fledged, probably. Not in terms of rights anyway, but it's a dictatorship. Can you be a citizen of a tyrannical country? I don't know. Anyway, this girl, because she's second generation, she hasn't known anything else. For her, Gilead is the status quo. She doesn't question anything initially. For her, everything is normal. So her voice is perfect for the reader to come right inside of Gilead. Then another voice that we have is the counterpoint to that, which is an outsider. We have a Canadian girl, and we know that Canada borders Gilead because Gilead occupies most of what today we call the United States of America. So it's the neighbor to the north, and they, as far as we know, live in a democratic regime as they do now. So she looks at Gilead, she has an outsider look at Gilead, and she's horrified by what little information she gets about it, but of course all the information that she gets is also of course mediated. And the third voice, which to me is the most fascinating of them all, it's Aunt Lydia's. And yeah, that's the Aunt Lydia from The Handmaid's Tale, the horrible, scary Aunt Lydia. But is Aunt Lydia as scary now that we hear from her directly, now that we see details of how she became Aunt Lydia? And I must say that I loved reading all the details about how all that happened. Now, writing a sequel 35 years after writing the first book could not have been easy for Atwood. And one small negative thing that I would say about this sequel is that it looks as if Gilead and even Canada, which in the narrative are countries in the future from us, they're in the past from the people who are studying Gilead, again, like with the first book, but for us they're in the future. And yet those two countries, Gilead and Canada, more pointingly, seem like countries from the past. And I think that's because Atwood wanted to keep the universe coherent, and I'm glad she did in a way, although I don't think it quite works. But I think the alternative would have been to retcon some of the stuff that she wrote in The Handmaid's Tale, and I think that would have been a mess, so I'm glad that she kept it consistent. The Testaments, like its predecessor, The Handmaid's Tale, just deals with the domestic lives with very few characters. So once again, we're not really privy to the spheres of power. And I think that's one of the strengths of both novels, and something that I think sets them apart from other dystopian narratives. I found The Testaments to be a page-turner. I could not stop reading that book, and I was left breathless by its climax, and I mean that in the best possible way. So, would I recommend The Testaments? Yes, absolutely, but you need to read The Handmaid's Tale first. Now, if you've read The Handmaid's Tale, there's no reason for you to read The Testaments unless you want to. Anyway, if you've read The Handmaid's Tale and you want to see my video review of it, I'm gonna link to it in the description box in this video. As far as I know, Margaret Atwood hasn't indicated whether she's working on a third book or even whether she plans to do it, but I think Gilead could make for a nice trilogy. Now, as far as what the third book should be about, I'm sure that Atwood has plenty of ideas. And I, for one, would read a third book if she ever wrote it and it got published. So let me know if you've read The Testaments or The Handmaid's Tale or both, or if you want to read The Testaments. Let's talk in the comment section down below as usual. And if this is the first video that you've watched on my channel, please subscribe. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you again very soon. Bye bye.